Jamuligans, spell like jam, but sounds like ham. Jamuligans, listen along with your friends and fam. It's time to hear from us pastors again.
Welcome in to Jamuligans, the weekly podcast of the pastors of Jamul Community Church in San Diego, California. Thank you for joining us today. You can find this podcast and other great teaching from JCC on our church app, on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you find your favorite podcast. We're thrilled to say we have 11 reviews on iTunes. Thank you so much. All of them 5 stars, by the way. You're so generous. We're glad you're enjoying it. And if you haven't done it yet, please do, or wherever you're listening, just review it. It helps get the word out about other good Christian content for other people to know about, and it's for the whole family. So we do have a unique show today. I had the privilege of interviewing Marisela Larkin, and she's a Jamul Community Church member who is counseling essential workers during the COVID-19 pandemic. You may have seen our signs around the community thanking healthcare workers and essential employees. We are truly grateful, and we've been praying on Sundays for you, at our weekly staff meetings, on our Thursday night prayer united times, and other groups I'm sure as well, and as individuals we've been doing that as well. So I hope you'll enjoy this glimpse inside the life of one healthcare provider and an essential worker during this crisis. Marisela is truly amazing, and it's really a special interview, so enjoy. So I'm here with Marisela Larkin, and how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's so great to have you. Last week at the pastors meeting, we were just talking about how awesome it would be to have you on, and thank you for just coming on short notice and just agreeing. We wanted to hear from one of our essential employees, a first line, kind of frontline person here during this crisis. And we have been praying earnestly and fervently for you and your work. And I know many have, and we've been excited by the updates we've heard and what we've heard the Lord's been doing. Marisela, you're a licensed marriage and family therapist, and you've been doing that for 25 years, and you've been with JCC for 15 years. And so, we just want to let our church community hear about the kind of ministry that you do. We've heard about your missions, and we know how awesome they are. And if you don't know about those, you can go on the YouTube page and see the other videos that have featured some of those. And you've been at JCC at least 15 years. So just a huge part of our church community. So thanks for being on. The first question I wanted to ask you today is just what, before the COVID-19 outbreak, what was your typical workday like, and just what kind of, what was your work and your field like at that point?
As a licensed marriage and family therapist, I have my own private practice. So on a typical day, I will go to the comfort of my office and see my patients face to face and help them with any everyday life circumstances. But I also have a certification as an employee assistance professional that serves the working population. And primarily what I do through that is I respond to any traumatic events that happened for any employed individual. So their companies will call me when something like suicide happens, the schools shootings, the banks robberies, you name it. Okay. So when I receive calls like that, I will interrupt my sessions, rearrange my schedule, and immediately go. And I serve companies like the U.S. Border Patrol, the police department, the fire department, the military, hospitals, Sharp, you name it, McDonald's, and everything in between.
Yeah.
Wherever there is a working population, that's where I serve. So that's my normal work, and I will do these trauma interventions, I would say maybe twice a week. And the rest of the time, I would just be in my nice air-conditioned office, enjoying what I do.
Yeah. So then what was the first COVID-19 related call that you had, or what was the first time, somebody called you in for something related to that?
Yeah, when the COVID-19 came about, actually, I need to tell you, about 6 months prior to the COVID-19, the Lord had laid on my heart to take a step of faith and stop seeing as many clients in my office
Okay.
and leave my schedule open to do the trauma intervention that I was doing every now and then.
Wow.
So I took a step of faith, and when the COVID-19 came, I started to worry, just like pretty much everyone else, and wonder like, okay, now I cannot see clients face to face,
Wow. Yeah.
and I cannot go to do these interventions because no one wants to get sick. So the companies were not calling me for the first few days. I started doing couple via Zoom, the interventions.
Okay.
And then the first actually on-site was for the postal department in Bakersfield. So I drove 5 hours each way. Wow. To help with the reaction that the postal employees were having.
Okay.
So that was in the mid-March, I believe.
Yeah.
So.
And now for the last few weeks, you've had a longer extended assignment. Is it in Fontana? Is that where you are right now?
Yeah, so it continues progressing. So I came back, actually I went to Fontana twice. Okay. And then I did a couple of via Zoom for different companies. And I also was called to be on site for a local Costco where I was for 7 days.
Okay.
Yeah, and then after that, I received the opportunity to be part of this team to assist the essential workers for Walmart in Fontana. Wow. So in Fontana is where Walmart has some of the biggest warehouses. So the essential workers who were sending out the food that we all needed, so much needed, was in high demand. So they were experiencing the high levels of stress, the amounts of 18-wheelers that they had to load up every day is just overwhelming. So I got a call to be there of support to help them with their reactions, not just to the high stress work that they were having, but also the reaction to the concerns with the crisis that we all were experiencing. So I left on April 2nd, and I have not gone back to San Diego other than just getting some of my essentials and continue doing the work. And I have been working since April 2nd, about 260 hours nonstop.
Oh, thank you so much. It's amazing. Yeah. And so for listeners, again, we're recording this on April 29th. So that's almost 4 weeks now that you've just been at this constantly. And can you talk a little bit more specifically about, I know there's like confidentiality in your counseling sessions and that kind of thing, but just in general, what are you hearing? How are their hearts breaking? What are they feeling? You did share a little bit already, but yeah, just elaborate on just the real pain and stress and feelings that a lot of these frontline essential workers are feeling.
Yes, the main concern is the lack of hope, not knowing what's going to happen if I die. That's one of the main questions. Wow. What's going to happen if my relatives die? One of the biggest concerns that I have is for younger people with, especially males, of course, with pregnant spouses. I see that a lot. So they are very concerned for their health, for their lives, what's going to happen. But then at the same time, I see a lot of gratitude amongst the people from the warehouse because they need to support their families. They have families and they have needs, and they are grateful that they found themselves in a place of employment where they could work and continue providing for their families. I need to apologize. I am in Fontana.
Yeah, it's Fontana very hot there.
107 degrees here.
Oh,
So
oh,
I
wow.
am so sorry, all for the Lord's glory.
For those of you who are just listening, Marisela is just trying to get all the sweat off of her face. So that's what she's referring to, and I can see that. And yeah, it's actually let up a little bit here in East County. It's only in the 80s today, so it's not in the 90s anymore. But wow, over 100 degrees. I'm sorry.
So no, please don't be. It reminds me of my Africa days.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
Yeah,
her
I
ministry
truly
in
feel as if
Uganda.
I were in a mission trip myself. So yeah, that's one. That's one of the main concerns. Of course, what's going to happen to me, but also financial concerns
Yeah.
is one of the problems that I see a lot. And another big concern that I noticed that the employees that I serve experience is lack of sleep.
Mm.
Yeah, it's a big problem, and increase in drinking. And I know I can tell you this because I'm not revealing anyone's identity in
Sure.
here.
Right.
But just in general, that's one of the themes that I see. As time goes by, the problem continues increasing in such a way. So started with, I am concerned about my family. I'm grateful that I have a job, but then day after day after day and working long hours and the way they do because the demand is so high, it has turned onto lack of sleep, increase in drinking. Some levels of anxiety have escalated, and I also see a lot of depression happening as a result of it.
So how do you balance the line? Because obviously, you're not being hired as a Christian counselor. Am I right? You're being hired by secular companies.
I am in a total secular setting. I am not I am not allowed to speak the word of God.
So how do you balance that line? Because with people who don't believe in Jesus, and obviously you feel like that's the answer, and you feel like that's the most important thing in the world, and you see how Christ can help us through our problems, help us through our stress, where we don't have to resort to escaping through alcohol or so yeah, how do you do that?
So the work that I do as a first responder is not to go and do therapy, but is to go and provide psychological first aid. So one of the things that I do is what I know as a woman of faith is to love and to be compassionate. Yeah. So I don't have to make any difference. And I don't have to draw any line. All I have to be is just the light of Jesus and just be there and just genuinely love on them and just remind them of the basic ways how they can take care of themselves. Yeah. I help them exploring their options and what they can do to ease the situation that they feel they are in. And there's no difference. There's no difference. Every morning before I walk into the place where I work, I pray, Lord, shine your light. Use me. I am your empty vessel. Mm-hmm. Cause me to say whatever they need to hear, Lord. May they be encouraged even though they don't know you. So that's my prayer every day. And that's all I do. I just show up. Show up and I just love on them.
Yeah, that's awesome. What would you suggest for just all of your listeners? What's one thing that they could do today that you feel like would improve their mental health overall? And again, you can give it from a Christian perspective or a counselor perspective, or put both hats on and give two pieces of advice. But what would you say to kind of everybody?
One of the things that I like educating people about is that God is the one who created us. Whether we believe in science and deny God, or both, because God is the creator of all things. Right. So I explain how the mind works in connection to the brain and the body. God created the mind, the body, and the brain to work in cooperation with each other. And we can only have one thought at a time. The thought that we choose to entertain is the one that's going to tell our body how to respond. So when we focus on worries that we cannot do anything about and we cannot change, we self-inflict the anxiety. Mm-hmm. But when we recognize that we have control over these thoughts that God tells us in the Word to focus on whatever is pure, whatever is noble, whatever is lovely and praiseworthy. When we start thinking that way, our brain starts telling our body, we are okay here. That's the way God created us. So our chemicals in our brain stabilize and we begin to feel better and think more clearly and make wise decisions about what we do have in front of us and not worry about what we don't. So that's what I recommend.
That's awesome.
It is a choice.
Yeah. So when I think we listen to the amount of hours you're working, and we think of the just emotional toil that you go in and just talk to person after person who's stressed and struggling and so many burdens. How do you take care of yourself with such a high demand on your heart and your soul? I mean, you've reached out for prayer, which is awesome. And like I told you before, we are praying for you. And there's a lot of brothers and sisters at JCC who are lifting you up. And I'm sure you have other people as part of your support team. But yeah, talk a little bit about how you cope and how you can carry on through such high demands in your job.
So I practice what I teach people, and I will tell you, because we all are in charge of someone. We all are taking care of someone. We have to, I always like using the analogy, like when we fly, what's the very first thing the flight attendants tells us to do? In case of an emergency, if we are traveling with elderly or with children, someone that we are taking care of, we have to put our oxygen mask first in order for us to attend to others. I practice that myself. I make sure that I go to the Lord in prayer. I maintain my relationship with Him. I go, when I feel discouraged or tired, I go to the promises that God tells me through the Word of God. So I go to His Word. I submit myself and humble myself before others and ask for prayer. And also connect. The most important thing, God made us relational. So we must connect with others. But then on the practical way, we have to remember that we have to take care of the temple that we are. So how can we take care of the temple of the Holy Spirit? We have to make sure we rest. I make sure that I sleep at least 8 hours. And yes, I have been working very hard, but my app on my phone can testify that I do sleep at least 8 hours every night, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to assist I wouldn't be any good to help others if I walk around fatigued. I make sure to eat healthy. I make sure to exercise. I put my 10,000 steps every day, believe it or not. Yes, every day. And you may wonder how. We all are different. We all have different priorities. Not everyone can, but not everyone does what I do either.
Right.
We all have different lifestyles. But the bottom line is we have to make sure we take care of ourselves. If we don't think about us first, I know right now it's so annoying to put the mask on, the one that we have to. Yeah. But if you can use the imaginary one, that's going to give you the physical and spiritual feeding that we need first in order to attend to others. So that's what I do myself, and that's what I recommend for everyone else to do.
That is a great word picture of just the mask of coverage, but also the oxygen mask on a plane. Those are great analogies. Marisela, thank you so much. I really loved your Kids World lesson you did a few weeks ago, and you had shared from Matthew 8 how Jesus calms the storm. Yeah. And I really feel like, and I think we've all heard, that you are being used like that to calm a lot of people's storms. We just thank you so much, and we're inspired by you and what God's doing through you. And I know you always point to the Lord, and it's Him who gets the glory through your work. But we're just so grateful for how you're allowing Him to use you. And another verse that you shared there was just Psalm 91:4. And may this just be a prayer for you, that God will cover you with His feathers, and under His wings give you refuge as you do this exciting work. So thank you so much for taking this time to be with us after a long day of work.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, that's going to do it for Jamuligans this week. Don't forget to check out our other weekly episode, which is called Weekly Bread. It's a 15-minute devotional message. Remember the Jamuligans slogan: whatever is true, noble, right, pure, lovely, or admirable, if anything's excellent or praiseworthy, think on such things. That's Philippians 4:8. If you think you know the voice of the person who's going to take us out of today's episode, send an email to jamuligans@jamul.org and be entered in a monthly contest for a $20 gift card to the local eatery, Bravos. Next week, the pastors will be back together in a Zoom room for a roundtable discussion. And I'll see if I can do quarantine recordings somewhere other than my daughter's lovely, precious bedroom. Until next time.
You've just listened to Jamuligans, a podcast of Jamul Community Church, the church home you've been looking for. Come back next week for more from the pastors.